essentially we all agreed that our purpose in creating this project was to establish to the rest of the community the history that's involved in the base or Brunswick Landing or however you want to call it, and why the history is important, because it is a big part of our community and it's really important for us to not forget that.
I mean, it's huge to think back and how that takes up so much of our town that people like never really went into for a while, and it was a huge kind of island in the middle.
Yeah.
You can access it from many different parts of our town, and you don't really realize it until you see the different ways to access that part of the land.
This is a big place, and people lived there, including
me.
you.
Yeah.
and it's a part of our community, and I think after the base left, and even right before it was established, it was definitely forgotten, and it's just too big of a aspect of our community to forget it. It's too important.
Well, the other piece of it is that when the people that lived on the property of Merriconeag community before the base opened, when they are gone, they're not going to be able to tell everyone else about.
Because it's such an incredible story that everyone should know what they went through and what they experienced.
Like, I lived on the base for 6 years, and I didn't even know there was a community before then.
So, in order to achieve that, we're talking about your part.
Yeah, Merriconeag.
And your part.
The base part.
And you guys.
Brunswick Landing.
And then we'll put it all together.
Let's make a movie, or
Yeah.
That'd be
That's a
really
good
cool.
idea. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, guys, let's go.
Well, I think what really, this whole project, I think, seems to me revolves around the value of personal and communal sense of space. The dilemma, it seems to me, is how do you balance the sense of place with the expanding need for a bigger sense of place, like the base? The question is, as we tear down, pave over, put away these personal or smaller senses of space, should we preserve any of them? Should we preserve anything? Should we preserve either buildings, areas, or memories in order to enrich the human experience, is the question.
Merriconeag, also known as Middle Bay, was a small, tight-knit farming community located on the Lower Harpswell Road and Garnet Road. The people who lived in this community were very close. They would go from home to home like they had many mothers or fathers. In 1952, there was roughly 55 people living there. Most of them were dairy farmers with many cows. This land was ideal for raising cows because it had a variety of grasses that was very salty. By feeding this to cows, it would dehydrate them, thus making them drink more water, which would produce more milk to sell. Most boys would start working on their family's farms. They would be taught everything they needed to know so that they could keep the tradition going for generations to come. Most families' farms were 6 generations old. This land was also good for producing other farm goods, such as wheat, lumber, wool, and clay for brickmaking. Within the Merriconeag Middle Bay community, there was a building and an area that was referred to as the Grange. The Grange was a place where people would meet for dinners, and that night it would turn into a dance hall. Here, they would also hold community meetings to discuss local issues. Many people met their future spouses there, including Helene Bisson. She met her husband there, who was a sailor at the time. When the Navy came, they invoked the power of eminent domain to eradicate the Merriconeag community. Once the Merriconeag community was emptied out, they leveled all the homes, leaving just a couple foundations to be seen today. This is a picture of the Jordan Foundation that at the time was holding up a barn. On the property, the Jordan family also had a well. That's where they got all their drinking water from. The Jordan house itself also lay on a handmade stone foundation that at the time was much bigger. This picture can give you an idea of what the bricks they might have used for the foundation at the Garnet Schoolhouse might have looked like at the time. This stone foundation at the Farron Farm was once a holding tank for many things. This marshy area with a man-made dam made it the ideal place for a brick-making yard.
Construction started on the Naval Air Station in March of 1943, and it was commissioned on April 14, 1943. Its primary initial purpose was to train Royal Canadian Air Force pilots of the British Naval Command. It was also used as a base from which to carry out airborne anti-submarine operations. It was deactivated in 1946 following the conclusion of World War II. In 1946, 47, and 48, it was used as an annex for UMaine with overflow housing at Bowdoin College. Many members of the UMaine graduating classes of 1950, 51, and 52 got their start at the former base.
When the lease was terminated in 1949, the property was taken over by the Brunswick Flying Service, but was short-lived as plans were made to reactivate the base to provide services to the fleet. Naval Air Station Brunswick was then re-established on March 15th of 1951, and new permanent structures were built to replace the temporary World War II ones, including new dual 8,000-foot runways. The last squadron left for Jacksonville in 2009, and the base was finally disestablished May 31st of 2011, a result of the federal base realignment and consolidation process, largely a budget-cutting measure since the Cold War had essentially ended. And we're going to interview Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 17 and my dad was stationed on the base from 2002 to 2007.
Okay, so describe the community and what the neighborhood was like there on the base.
It was like a community within a community. It was like any other neighborhood. It had many families with children of all ages. There was always kids playing outside. The neighborhood I lived in, some of us became like lifelong friends.
Okay, what was unique about the base?
On the base, we had the Navy Exchange, we had hotels, we had the rec mall for kids to play at, we had playgrounds, we had a bowling alley, a clinic, and an off-base grocery store.
How did you find out the base was closing?
I don't really remember what was going on with the whole base closing in 2005, considering I was about 8 or 9 years old. I knew that they were considering closing the base, but I wasn't entirely sure what was going on. I do remember in 2009 there were a lot of military people being stationed down to Florida, and the base became really empty. There was almost no one around. It was like a ghost town.
So you were there for the closing ceremony, so what was that like for you?
During the closing ceremony, I remember looking back on my life on the base. I remembered all the fun memories I had of my childhood with my family and friends. I thought about how every building that I ever walked into was now closed, such as the Exchange, the rec mall. The ceremony was held at my dad's old hangar, so I thought of how many times I went there to say goodbye to him when he had to go on deployment, how many times we'd park over there and pick him up after he would get home. The closing of the base didn't really sink in until the next time I went to the base with my family. It was a really sad feeling because it was a place I grew up on for 6 years, It was a special place to me. It was a place I considered home, and it felt like it didn't really mean anything to like the businesses and the families that now lived on the base. I feel like they didn't really realize what the base was like for all of us military families that lived there. Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Wilkie was one of the original sailors stationed at NAS Brunswick when it first opened in 1943. He arrived at NAS Brunswick in March 1943 and was on board for the April 15, 1943 establishment ceremony of NAS Brunswick. Mr. Wilkie watched the first flag fly over NAS Brunswick in 1943, and he is here today to witness the lowering the flag for the last time over NAS Brunswick 68 years later. Mr. Wilkie, welcome. Of course, the 1960s will be mostly remembered for the introduction of the venerable P-3 Orion to Brunswick Patrol Squadrons. The Orion certainly has been the aircraft most associated with this base. And just as the capabilities of the P-3 evolved over the years, so did the services that NAS Brunswick provided. Every war, every conflict, every military action that the United States has been involved in included the P-3 and specifically aircraft and crews from NAS Brunswick. Request permission to retire the colors of NAS Brunswick.
Since 2011, MIRA, a public municipal communication team, has been responsible for the redevelopment of Brunswick Naval Air Station. They have reopened this area to the rest of the town for businesses and public use. They have helped to create more than 700 jobs. At the moment, Brunswick Landing is now home to 32 new businesses, some being Kestrel Aviation, Savvy Links, Moonlika Healthcare, and Oxford Network.
Moonlika Healthcare is a Finnish-based company that produces medical bandages. They opened their new facility on the base, which is the new U.S.-based factory. They have a facility in Wiscasset that creates one of the major components of the bandage.
The rec center has recently switched locations from being on Federal Street in town to out in Brunswick Landing. They purchased a military training building and have been working on renovations. The new facility consists of an indoor track, basketball courts, 2 preschool classrooms, and other multi-purpose offices.
Thank you for watching this film. We hope you enjoyed it.
We feel that Brunswick Landing is a very important part of our community's history as well as an essential part of our future.
If you have any feedback, please email us at rwilson@brunswick.k12.me.us and let us know what you thought of the video.
Thank you very much to everyone who has contributed to this content, and special thanks to Rick Wilson and Fred Kerber.
Yay! Say bye, guys.
Bye!